Hi everybody, welcome back to tnoozLIVE at GBTA, presented by BCD Travel. I'm Martin Cowan, Editorial Director for Tnooz. I've got an esteemed panel assembled tightly in this little studio, and we're going to try and get through NDC and One Order in 12 minutes. That's a challenge and a half. So on the far left is Thane, who's Vice President of Global Distribution and Channel Strategy for BCD. Next to him, Jason Kramer, Managing Consultant for Advito. And to my immediate left, we've got Mike Premo, who's CEO for ARC. We had conversations beforehand about how on earth we were going to get through NDC and One Order in 12 minutes, and we came up with a sort of general introductory question that I think will frame the conversation for the next 11 and a half minutes. And that's just, you know, the NDC within the past couple of months seems to become quite mainstream. We've had the major announcements from Sabre about its Beyond NDC, partners getting involved, similar announcement from Amadeus about its NDC-X. I was at an NDC session this morning, and there are lots of other live implementations of NDC around that the participants haven't made public yet. So NDC is here, it's happening, it's live. What I would be quite interested to find out is if we were to, you know, find the fast forward button and move forward a year, what the conversation we might be having. So I'm just wondering, looking forward over the next 12 months, now that we're basically saying that NDC is established, it's mainstream, it's here, it's live, it's happening, what is going to be happening over the next 12 months now that we've reached that, now that that point of acceptance has got here? So Thane, maybe just give us an idea of how you see it panning out over the next 12 months or so.
Yeah, thanks Martin. I think probably what we're seeing now is we're beginning to head towards a tipping point. And I think over the next 12 months we'll start to see the convergence of a number of different streams of technology work that have happened, a number of different theoretical ideas around it, and we'll start to see the major IT companies really beginning to industrialize an NDC solution that the airline industry can use. We'll see some short-term solutions in the next quarter. I think they will be ramped up in the first quarter of 2019. And I think as we get towards the summer and the latter part of 2019, I think we'll see the deployment of proper NDC solutions. It won't do everything the industry wants, but I think we'll be moving to a much more positive place, and we'll see the beginnings of the technology that will allow for proper personalization and tailored offers over time.
Okay, Jason, you're approaching NDC from a slightly different perspective. I mean, you're having conversations with the travel buyers. I mean, what are they wanting to happen over the next 12 months?
Well, I think what the buyers are saying is they want to have I guess a bit of a feeling out process. They know it's coming, it's become more widely accepted, and what they're looking for now and anticipate going forward is something tangible to play with. It's in many respects now for years been talked about in concept. It's now coming to market, and it's going to allow them an opportunity to see what it can do for their travel program, what it can do in the airspace, and what it means to their travelers and their travel program. So I think this next year is going to be an opportunity for them to really understand what NDC is for their travel program and actually have something tangible to work with. Okay,
and Mike, I mean, you've got, again, a slightly different angle, which is the great thing about NDC, is there are so many angles, and I feel like you know, trying to think of the word, a pentagon, an octagon, or some sort of strange multi-angled shape whose name I can't remember. But you're sort of NDC and One Order, and as I understand it, One Order is almost like the next, that's sort of 2 or 3 years down the line. But I mean, is that where NDC, maybe just sort of explain what One Order is to people who aren't as close to it as we are. Yeah.
Happy to. So One Order is the next stage of the NDC process. So the first part of NDC is about offer management. So it's about how do you get an offer from the airline through the distribution channel to the agency or the end user. So the focus for since the beginning has been on offer management. How do we get those offers created and through the channel? And that work is starting to bear some fruit. The next phase will be really order management. And the end game for the airlines is to be able to make a ticket transaction much more of a standard e-commerce transaction. And by doing so, they hope to enable similar normalized e-commerce transactions with other parties, whether it be hotels, whether it be suntan lotion for your beach vacation. These are the things that they want to be able to offer to customers, and they need a way to fulfill that, not using e-tickets, because Maui Jim sunglasses does not know what an EMD is, or an
Yeah.
e-ticket. So they're trying to normalize the industry around more standard e-commerce transactions, and that's really what one order is code for.
Okay, I mean, are buyers looking at one order, or are they just sort of taking a breath and thinking, let's get our head around
I think
what
at this
NDC
point
is?
they just want to digest NDC. I
Yeah.
think one order is a ways off, and they're looking more at what NDC can do for them now as opposed to looking in the long term. I think what NDC can offer to them now in the short term and in the next year, 2 years is being able to use NDC as an opportunity to kind of personalize their travel program to their individual travelers, not just segmenting their specific company or their specific buyer perspective, but more what can NDC do for their travelers and what they're able to buy from a value perspective, and one order for them is way off into the future.
Okay, and Thane, again, I mean, are you presumably there's stuff going on in the background at BCD around one order, but I mean, are you still focusing primarily on the sort of the immediacy of NDC?
I think the latter part, to be honest, Martin, the immediacy of NDC may not be as immediate, I think, as perhaps everybody might wish it to be. One order is a way down the line for us. We have to figure out many things around the tech stack we have today, how we're going to interact, how we're going to continue to capture the data, the important security information our travelers need, how we're going to manage travel programs. We've got to deal with those issues first. The idea of one order, I think, is probably much further down the line than anyone imagines. It's if I look back in time to technical changes that have happened and benefited the whole industry, one of the things I would point to is e-ticketing was a benefit for everybody. It took 13 years to implement across the industry. And that's just one change that was beneficial to everybody. So I think one order is going to come, it's going to streamline systems in the very long term, but I think we're a number of years before we need to seriously worry too much about that.
Okay, so what do you think's happened in the past couple of months that's got NDC to this sort of mainstream point? Is it just the constant messaging from IATA that it's here? Or is it the actual schema themselves are more robust, and these solutions can now actually be built on something that's a bit more solid than it might have been previously? I mean, is there anything specific that's happened recently that's brought it to the fore?
I think there is, and I think you've hit on it. I think it was schema 17.1 that was released that was seen to be robust and seen to be a technical standard that the GDS organizations could work with and industrialize. There were too many challenges on previous schemas for it really to be something they could work with. So most GDS companies will work with 17.1 and above, and they'll make it backwards compatible, but they couldn't work behind that. So I think that's been a big impetus for it, along with things like the IATA leaderboard, the top 21 airlines saying they're going to commit to a certain volume through indirect channels in NDC by 2020. So a number of activities, but remember, we're 6 years in. So activity at the moment is only one part of a very long journey.
Okay, and Jason, so the buyers that you talk to, do they know what 17.2 is, or are they just
They
looking
have no
at,
clue.
Are they just looking at what
and
it can do?
And I would argue they don't need to know.
Yeah.
I go back to your question about what has been the tipping point, and I would argue in many respects it's been the airlines and the industry pushing it forward, and rightfully so. It hasn't been force-fed to them in a way that it's bad. The airlines have brought it forward because and the industry has brought it forward because it's a great opportunity to bring more content to the travelers and to the corporate community, and thus allowing the corporate community to get a better hold of where they're spending their dollars.
Okay, Mike, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think the industry is going through this feeling out process. Nothing accelerates change in the B2B sector like enhancements in the B2C sector. So, the day that robust NDC content is available on one of the normal consumer websites, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the rest of the business travel ecosystem to catch up. Because no travel manager wants their travelers coming in saying, hey, I can do it on Expedia, why can't I do it on blah, blah, blah?
Exactly.
So, and those consumer sites aren't really happening yet because they're still dealing with scalability issues. And is it going to be an XML feed, or is it going to be an API? There's still a lot of technical integration solutions that are being tried, tested, discussed, and worked on. So there's still a gap between the press release and the transaction. So.
Okay, and how long will it be before that gap between the press release and the transaction has been closed?
Yeah, I'll go back to what I said earlier. I think over the next 12 months we'll start to see that gap closing, and over the next 3 years I think we'll see that industrialization beginning to happen. When we get to that pure retailing environment and what that means for the end corporate customer, I think remains to be seen, because we have a habit in our industry of things that go off at different angles that we never expect. But I would say the next 1 to 3 years we'll start to see that gap really, really close down.
Okay.
You know, we're seeing a bit of an evolution as well, because in Europe, which is where some of the most sort of assertive direct connect NDC implementations have occurred, a different approach is being taken in the US. I mean, the US carriers have been much more concerned about sort of the competitive reactions. They're much more engaged with customers and corporates in saying, hey, we don't want to disrupt your business processes. We understand GDS is important to you. They're committing to work with GDSs. That's quite a different flavor of NDC implementation being discussed here in the States than we've seen thus far in Europe.
Yeah.
And sorry to throw this on you, but what about Asia Pacific? I mean, if Europe sort of embraced it, America's been sort of reluctant for competitive reasons. I mean, what about Asia Pacific? I mean, how are airlines over there approaching NDC?
You know, as we deal with your Asian carriers, we don't see as much energy and focus around NDC as we do in the more developed markets. So I think they're much more agency dependent. They're much more actually labor intensive, really, in many of the business processes over there. So I think they will be relatively late adopters of NDC in the APAC region.
Okay. Anything else to add?
Well, I would differ slightly on that last one, because
controversy.
Yeah, I think we will see an Asia-based carrier do some work around NDC fairly significantly. I think it will relate to GDS. But the model for a lot of our business in Asia is a very heavily driven low-cost carrier model anyway, who aren't really at the moment embracing NDC because they're already there with their retailing models. But I still think we'll see something coming out pretty soon from major Asia-based carrier around this.
Okay. All right.
Last thing I would add is, I think from a buyer's perspective is they're ready for it. They've been waiting and hearing about this for quite a while now, and like I said at the beginning, they're waiting for something tangible with which to work with, and they're ready to move forward.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much, chaps. That was fascinating. We could talk about NDC forever, and I was I wasn't at the session today because I was only 5 minutes early, and it was standing room out. Well, it wasn't even standing room. They shut the room off and they shoved us all out to listen to it on audio. It was so clearly, NDC is here. It's real. It's happening. The conversations have shifted to actions and implementation, which 6 years on, not bad turnaround. So. All right, well, thanks very much, everybody, and thank you, everybody out there, for watching Tnooz Live at GBTA, presented by BCD Travel. Martin Cowan, Editorial Director, signing off, but I'll be back. Thank you very much.